All right, so we have a lot of bills on the calendar today. We're going to try to get through as many as we can, and we'll be jumping around a little bit in the order. But first, I want to thank our sergeants at arms: Terry Barnhart, Gary Bridges, Mike Harris, Chris Moore, and Hal Roach. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And then we have a new group of pages with us this week. So pages, what we normally do is we have you come up to the microphone, and we want you to tell us your name, who your sponsor is, and where you're from. So do we have a microphone they can use?
Yes, we got them working right now.
How about this one over here?
Sure.
So if you guys will just come up and who you are, where you're from, and who sponsored you.
My name is Riley Crucell. I am from Wilson, North Carolina, and my sponsor is Senator Newton.
I'm Daniel Echeverria. I'm from Harrisburg, North Carolina, and I'm sponsored by Senator Overcash.
Are you related to anybody in the legislature? Next, Vera. No,
My name is Lake Bristol. I'm from High Point, North Carolina, and my senator is Senator Lowe.
My name is Vera Lamblin. I'm from Pinehurst, North Carolina, and my sponsor is Senator McGinnis.
Thank you, and I think we have one more. Jordan.
My name is Jordan Caldwell. I'm from Kernersville, North Carolina, and my sponsor is Senator Robinson.
All right, thank you all for being here today, and I hope you have a great week in the Senate. The first bill we're going to take up on the calendar is the Personal Privacy Protection Act, and I'm going to step aside and let Senator Britt handle the chair for me while I explain the bill.
Senator Daniel, I believe there's an amendment on this bill.
There is, Mr. Chair, so if we could do the amendment first. It's Amendment 416-ABB-19, version 10. Members should have a copy. So I would say, just in regard to the amendment, that the amendment is the product of working with a lot of our state agencies, the Secretary of State's office, the Attorney General's office, DHHS, to try to ensure that they can still fulfill their statutory duties that they need to in certain cases, but still be consistent with the purpose of the bill, which is donor privacy. And so I ask for your support for the amendment.
Okay, and this amendment was a product of discussion with all stakeholders?
All that I know of.
Any questions or comments about the amendment? Senator Daniel moves for adoption of the amendment. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The bill as amended is back before Senator Daniel.
So Senate Bill 416 would generally prohibit state agencies from accessing or disclosing the member, supporter, and volunteer lists of nonprofits. It allows for disclosure of certain information where expressly provided in statute. It permits a nonprofit or any of its members affected by the unlawful production of personal information to seek appropriate relief in court. The bill still recognizes the legitimacy of existing disclosure laws in the campaign finance and nonprofit registration context, and permits other legally required disclosures. In total, there are 20 other states across the country that have adopted similar bills into law, and this bill, as amended, is the product of a lot of collaboration among bill proponents as well as the agencies that I mentioned earlier. So.
Any questions or comments about the bill or the amendment? Where's my sign-up sheet?
For speakers? I don't see any speakers.
Okay.
Senator Britt?
Yes, Senator Grafstein.
Thank you. I had a technical question. This may be for staff. It's about the end of Section 4. Section 3 says one of the prohibited activities to require a current or prospective contractor or grantee to provide a list of nonprofit organizations to which the current or prospective contractor or grantee has provided financial or non-financial support. And my question is whether we are, in our budget and elsewhere, we sometimes give grants, either directed grants or through agency appropriations to nonprofit entities. And the question is whether this would prohibit us from requiring them to report back on how they spent the money, to whom it was given, and so on. And I think that's a technical question for staff, but I'm happy to have any answer.
So I'll just say, first of all, I think the intent of the bill and the amendment was to allow government entities that needed to seek information for that type of purpose to be allowed, but I'd have to ask staff if your specific question is addressed.
Thank you.
Patterson.
Amy Darden, Legislative Analysis. We didn't receive any comments on that section being an issue.
Follow-up, Senator Grafstein.
Follow-up, yeah. And if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine. I just wondered if there was someplace else. I know we can always put in the bill or the budget that this grantee will report back, but we don't tend to do that. I just wondered, and this might be an unfair question in short notice, whether there's something else in state law that gives us the ability to do that, because that's the concern. And I appreciate that it's short notice, and I just noticed it this morning myself, so I apologize for that.
If I could comment on that.
Senator Daniel.
So my understanding is that OSBM does, in a lot of these grants we do in the budget, that they do seek information from the entity. So I don't know that this prohibits it, but I guess we can try to find out. They haven't contacted us.
Thanks. And
Additional follow-up, Senator Grafstein.
thank you. If we could do that, I think that'd be important, because it does have any public agency, and I want to make sure we're not doing something unintentional. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, have a motion for favorable from Senator Lazara as to Senate Bill 416 as amended, rolled into a new PCS, unfavorable as to the original bill with a referral to rules. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Senator Daniel.
I forgot to thank Senator Moffitt for standing there with me and making the bill better. All right, so I'm going to go now to Senate Bill 176, let Mitchell County sign an MOU with Unicoi. Senator Ralph Heiss is recognized, and I think there might be an amendment to this. All right, who's got the amendment? All right, so Senator Britt moves to amend the bill, Senate Bill 176. And the amendment is 176 ACN-17 version 2. You want staff to explain it?
Yeah, essentially this allows for cooperative agreements between law enforcement with Mitchell County and the Tennessee Sheriff's Office across the line to be able to continue of no opposition. This was worked on with the bill sponsors as well as the law enforcement.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is amended, and Senator Heiss is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill does, and the clarifications that were in there with the amendment, this allows Mitchell County to enter an agreement with Unicoi County, Tennessee. They can do some limited things now if they are chasing in an active chase of a fugitive or those type of things. This expands that so that they can do cooperative law enforcement to stop drug distribution that's coming across the state line. Others, I know 6-7 years ago there was a body found at Roan Mountain that was there, and quite frankly, when you're in the mountains and others trying to guess where the Tennessee line is and the North Carolina line is a little complicated in this terrain. And this particularly focus on an MOU that will assign liability between the two counties as well, which would be a little different than your local law enforcement entering that, because this is with the state of Tennessee. So this is requested by my law enforcement officers, and hopefully something we can get the Roan Mountain area a little better covered.
Thank you, Senator Heiss. There's actually an interesting North Carolina podcast about somebody who stood on the North Carolina side of the line and shot somebody on the Tennessee side of the line, and how that became an interesting case. So if you want to look that up, it's a nice drama podcast. Any questions from the committee? We got a motion from Senator Craven.
Listen to different podcasts, I'm sure.
Any questions from the committee or member of the public that wants to speak on Mitchell County and Unicoi County? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The motion was for a favorable report as to Senate Bill 176 as amended, unfavorable to the original bill, favorable to the bill as amended with a rolled into a new PCS and referred to the Senate Rules Committee. All right, next. Senate Bill 655, extend rights to Catawba Nation. Is that Senator Alexander?
Senator Alexander.
Got Senator, you want to hear your amendment first?
There's an amendment first.
All right, Senator Britt moves to amend the bill.
The amendment should be on your desk. The amendments S655 ATG -33. What the amendment does is deletes sections 5 through 18, 20 through 24, delete sentences at the end of GS 22 on page 2, lines 2 to 3. It adds uncodified language in a new section 6, and it renumbers former section 19 and 25 and makes conforming changes to the long title. The goal of this bill was to assist with law enforcement functions from the Catawba Nation at the new casino that's been constructed in their territory. This allows them to do that, also provides for full faith and credit for their courts. There were several other aspects of this bill that would have required this bill to go to other committees that we did not have time to necessarily go through with the crossovers. Those sections have been removed, so this bill could come to Judiciary, deal with judiciary issues, and deal with the imminent issues the Catawba Nation is trying to deal with, and move the bill forward and make the crossover date. No opposition on the amendment.
Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill as amended is back before the committee. Does Senator Alexander wish to speak further?
Yes, I'll just briefly go over what the amended bill does do, and I want to thank my co-sponsors, Senators Britt and Overcash. As was mentioned, this bill basically now, in its amended form, would grant to the Catawba Indian Nation the same rights currently granted to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians relating to full faith and credit, tribal law enforcement authority, and probation and parole. It includes the Catawba Indian Nation in the exchange of criminal and civil information provided by the Judicial Department, and requires copies of the appellate division reports to be provided to the Catawba Nation tribal courts, and also makes it a first-degree trespass for a person to enter or remain without authorization on lands of the Catawba Indian Nation after the person has been excluded by resolution passed by the Catawba Indian Nation Executive Committee, and it also authorizes the State Board of Community Colleges to waive tuition and registration fees for courses supporting the training needs of the Catawba Indian Nation law enforcement, fire, EMS, or rescue and life-saving tribunal government departments or programs. I might also add that this bill will also state that notwithstanding anything else in the bill, that that all contracts that the Catawba have with the county or any other entities will still remain in effect, and I would ask for your support.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Senator Lazzara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Alexander. I'll move for a favorable at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Senator Lazzara. Let me see if anybody signed up. Anybody signed up from the public to speak on this bill? Seeing none. Senator Lazzara moves he moves for a favorable report to Senate Bill 655 as amended, rolled into a new PCS, unfavorable to the original with a referral to rules. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. And let's keep you up there and go back to your other bill, Senate Bill 164, theft of temporary housing. And Senator Britt, I think, has an amendment. Senator Britt, can you explain your amendment?
Yeah, the amendment should be in front of you. It is S-164 ACN-14 version 2. It adds definitions for emergency area and temporary housing and clarifies that the offense of trespass during an emergency applies only during declared states of emergency. No opposition.
Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senator Alexander, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I also want to thank my co-sponsors, Senators Moffitt and Senator Settle. They by far have endured, I guess, the majority of the, or a large part of the effects caused by Hurricane Helene. During Hurricane Helene, we saw the absolute best of North Carolina come out in the fact that our churches, our nonprofits, our local airports, individuals, agencies all came together to help and enlist aid to our fellow people out west. In the same time, unfortunately, we've seen some of the worst come out, and this bill is an attempt to help address that. We have had situations where people who had received temporary housing, whether it be RVs or tents or other things, actually had them stolen from them. And they would come back and their housing, what they thought was going to be their house for a while, was actually taken, including things like propane tanks or generators and that sort of thing. So as is amended, this bill basically increases the penalty to a Class F felony for those people who do such things under those circumstances during a declared state of emergency in the state area declared a state of emergency. It also allows them to claim or sue for treble damages.
So Senator Buck Newton, you want to make a motion? Yes.
I move for a favorable when at the appropriate time.
I think this is appropriate. Any other questions from the committee?
That was it.
Any member of the public that wants to speak on this bill? Seeing none, all in favor of Senate Bill 164, theft of temporary housing, as amended, rolled into a new PCS, unfavorable to the original, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and it has a referral to rules. Thank you, Senator Alexander. I think Senator, let's do Senator Buck Newton, Senate Bill 554, Farmers Protection Act, and I think there is an amendment that Senator Newton wants to propose. So.
I move to amend the bill.
Right.
I can do it from right here.
Okay, go ahead. Explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It should be before everybody. I think it's been handed out. It's 554 ACE-54 version 6. I appreciate Senator Craven working with me and the Bankers Association working with me on see if we can't get this bill a little bit more where everybody's happy with it. Having said that, this amendment, what it would do away with the rebuttable presumption that a bank's denial of service to an agriculture producer violates the section. It makes a slight change to the definition of what is an agricultural producer, but it would do away with the annual reporting, but it still would allow for there to be some enforcement actions if there was a violation. Happy to answer any questions. Full disclosure to the committee, I'm not sure. I think the Bankers Association's view on this is neutral, so that I don't want to mischaracterize it, but this has been some agreed upon language and some back and forth, and appreciate the last minute working on it to clarify where we are. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the amendment.
Any questions from the committee on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill as amended is back before the committee. Do you wish to say any more? Okay, so Senator Britt moves for a favorable, seconded by Senator Craven. The motion is favorable report to Senate Bill 554 as amended, rolled into a new PCS, unfavorable to the original with a referral to rules. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed no. The ayes have it, and the bill passes. Senator Gailey, think you can do yours pretty quick? 375. So, committee, Senate Bill 375 is a PCS. Have a motion that we consider the PCS as Senator Buck Newton moves. We consider the PCS. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed no. The ayes have it. And Senator Gailey is recognized to explain the PCS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to say thank you to Senator Daniel and the other Judiciary chairs, not only for hearing the bill, but also for working on it with me to improve it. So hazing has been fairly narrowly defined in North Carolina up until now, really only looking at the incidents which might happen in a collegiate fraternity type situation. This would expand that to include situations where it's a coach who may, or another authority figure who may be requiring the behavior that would subject the student to physical injury. And it raises the penalty of the offense from a Class 2 misdemeanor to a 1A misdemeanor if it's a student is the one who is doing the hazing. If it is a coach or other school personnel, then it would be a Class I felony. Appreciate your support.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, any member of the public wishing to speak? Again, seeing none, the motion was from Senator Newton moves for a favorable to the PCS for Senate Bill 375. Unfavorable to the original bill with a referral to rules. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed nay. The ayes have it. All right, so I'm going to do the next one, Senate Bill 358, hoping that Senator Sari can move this along through here pretty efficiently. 378. I think there's no amendment to this one, so.
There is no.
Okay. All right, Senator Sari is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there is no amendment to this particular bill. I'll note that there are some very technical things that are still being worked on, and I'll discuss those hopefully or potentially in advance of the floor. This is a bill that takes a stab at revising our homeowners association laws in North Carolina. A lot of these same provisions passed this chamber last session in the form of House Bill 542 when we got it over from the House of Representatives side. The bill's relatively comprehensive. It provides additional due process results and requirements for foreclosures based on assessments. It outright bars and does away with foreclosures by HOAs over fines. It puts caps on fines. It takes a hard line against statement of unpaid assessments, which are fees that are charged to you by an HOA or an HOA management company at closing. I think if I could sum up this bill, knowing that we have a large calendar, this is a property rights protection bill. This is the most sweeping legislation that we've seen in some time with respect to HOAs in this chamber. I know there's a companion bill that's moving through the House of Representatives as well that's similar substantially to this. And I think this might be the section that we can get something done major to restore rights back to our residences here in North Carolina. I want to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Sawyer, and Senator Johnson, who have worked hard on this and been very passionate about it. This is an important topic to lots of our fast-growing communities across North Carolina. We have some of the largest HOAs and the most numerous HOAs in the nation. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm glad to stand for any questions and would commend this bill for your support.
Senator Britt.
I just move for favorable report at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Chitlick.
Thank you. I want to thank the sponsors of this bill. I'm in favor of it, and I know it's the result of many, many years of work, so thank you for doing it. There have been some concerns from DOJ about an unfunded mandate around consumer protection and reporting on this bill. Can you address some of those concerns and talk about just the capacity of our state agencies to handle these kinds of complaints?
Senator Sari, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Senator Chitlick. One of the things that we did differently this time is ask DOJ to take a look at some of the complaints. I mean, they already have some of these requirements. I think it just makes clear that they are an avenue to receive that. I heard their concerns about it, looking at ways potentially to address that, probably more appropriate in discussions with our colleagues on the House, maybe in a conference process, and potentially looking at additional ways that we can collect those complaints, investigate some of those issues as well. There might be some other agencies that are more suited for it, but right now, for a conversation starter, I think DOJ is where we're going to take a look at that.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Mohammed.
Just a suggestion to Senator Sari for that portion. So generally, the Department of Justice is known as a consumer protection agency that takes complaints against entities. So instead of having the HOAs complaining about its members and the members complaining about the HOA, I would just suggest that you limit it to the members reaching out to DOJ about HOA concerns. That'd probably streamline a lot of the concerns at DOJ. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Any other comments from the committee? Seeing none, anybody from the public that would like to speak on Senate Bill 378? Sir, if you'll approach the microphone and tell us who you are, who you're with, and if you can have, say, 1.5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. My name is Mark Swall. I'm with Democracy Out Loud, but I'm here today because I'm a Secretary-Treasurer of our HOA, and we fully support this bill. We do not want to put liens and fines on our neighbors. We really don't. And I'm fully supportive of trying to get someone in the middle to help, resolve these things. I do have a couple questions. I know you can't answer them, but I just want to get them out there. First is item 6 on page 1, where it talks about parking. I'm a little confused. We have declarants that say that you can't have street parking at night. And there's places in the community where you can park cars if you need to. So we just want to make sure, because our streets aren't wide enough, we're a 55+ community, therefore you're parking on both sides and going down the middle, a little dicey for some of us. So I just want to make sure that we got that right. And the second thing, you talk about executive HOAs and then HOA boards. We are President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer. That's our HOA. So I'm not sure if we need to make that distinction in this bill, that we're really talking about HOAs. But thank you so much for this bill.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, Senator Britt moves for a favorable report to Senate Bill 378. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you, Senator Sari. Let's now go to Senate Bill 639, the North Carolina Farm Act. It's not little. Senator Jackson is recognized to explain the bill, and I know you have some amendments, so you'd rather discuss the bill first?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. I'm going to go through what we feel like is probably judiciary provisions in this bill. But before I get that, I would like to thank my co-sponsors on this bill, which is Senator Barnes and Senator Sanderson. They've been of invaluable help on trying to craft this. And all the things most folks don't like, they're mine, so you can blame me. But I was just going to start with the provisions that pertain to the Judiciary Committee, but I'll be happy after the amendments to entertain any questions. Section 2 will establish a feral swine working group. This section establishes a new feral swine working group modeled after the existing Beaver Damage Control Advisory Board and was agreed to by the Farm Bureau, the Pork Council, NCDA, and Consumer Services, and the North Carolina Wildlife Resources. Section 13 grants additional liquid petroleum gas authority to the Department of Agriculture. This change would clarify that the duties established under this section may be carried out by the Commissioner or the Commissioner's agents. It also includes additional authority for the Commissioner or his authorized agents to inspect records, issue stop sales, hold or removal of liquid petroleum equipment, and recall a vehicle used for delivery of liquid petroleum for inspection. These changes are designed to increase the public safety and to ensure a safe and reliable product for consumers. Section 16 reduces the penalty for certain shellfish aquaculture violations. It creates a penalty scale for improperly marked shellfish lease areas. We've heard there's been a lot of discussion amongst Division of Marine Fisheries as well as some of our oyster farmers, and we're trying to address those concerns with this piece of legislation. A first occurrence shall result in a written warning only. A second occurrence within 1 month of the written warning shall be punishable as an infraction, and a third occurrence within 1 month of the written warning shall be a Class 3 misdemeanor. This section would also create a 1-month grace period for operating under an expired aquaculture permit or shellfish lease agreement. Section 17 will give the Department of Agriculture law enforcement officers jurisdictions over additional offenses. It gives the North Carolina Forest Service law enforcement officers an expanded enforcement authority, including enforcement of laws outside of the department's area of jurisdiction. This would make it be relevant if an officer encountered a crime taking place that would normally be out of the officer's jurisdiction while already in the process of investigating a forestry-related crime. North Carolina Forest Service officers encounter many potential charges when investigating potential crimes. This provision would provide these limited number of officers with the ability to charge those offenses without taking up the resources of other law enforcement officers. I am aware that the stakeholders pertaining to this section of the bill are still working things out, and hopefully we'll get to some happy conclusion before the end of the day of the bill. Section 18 will increase the penalty for a second or sequential offense for larceny of crops. It adds an increased penalty of a Class G felony and a fine of not less than $500 for a second conviction of crop larceny. This addresses additional cases of crop larceny within our state. Section 19 will create a rebuttable presumption regarding insufficient labeling allegations against manufacturers of pesticide products farmers rely upon. It creates a rebuttable presumption in cases of claims against pesticide manufacturers for insufficient labeling. A plaintiff may overcome the presumption and obtain a recovery in court by showing that EPA-approved label was not supported by the scientific consensus, and this was known and should have been known to the manufacturer or the seller at the time of sale. This section is intended to prevent lawsuits from bogging down the judicial system and creating fair outcomes for all parties. It also works to ensure that our farmers have the products they need to feed and clothe us at a reasonable price for producers and consumers. Farmers large and small depend on these products to provide for our state. And make no mistake, this does not preclude anyone from bringing a lawsuit against the manufacturers or sellers of pesticides for any cases or actions, nor does it provide blanket immunity. It simply requires that a lawsuit claiming a company failed to meet certain objective standards. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I have asked Senator Sanderson if he would introduce our amendments.
All right, thank you. Before we do that, I forgot to mention that we have one of our esteemed Council of State members here with us, Commissioner Troxler. We appreciate you being here and appreciate all that you've done for our state agriculture for the last 20 years. And we all like to eat, so we appreciate what you do. And Senator Sanderson, you'd like to move to amend the bill?
I would, Mr. Chairman. I have a total of 3 amendments to send forth.
All right, if you could just tell us the title of the first one.
Okay, I'm going to direct the committee to the correct amendment, and Senator Jackson will explain it. The first one is ATQ 25 version 3.
All right. The committee should have the amendment. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Sanderson. Amendment 1, as I'm calling it, it would first remove any changes to the current law regarding dispensing of raw milk to individuals or partial owners of lactating animals, otherwise known as herd share programs. Under this amendment, there would be no changes to the herd share programs. The second part of this amendment is to commission a study throughout the Agriculture and Forestry Awareness Study Commission to examine the facts regarding raw milk and presenting ideas regarding raw milk and herd share programs. And this is in compliance, or sort of trying to appease the thousands of emails I've had, text messages, phone calls, and also that I understand there's a petition going around.
If we could have,
and that's not to say that we don't listen, but until we file this bill, sometimes you don't know what's out there. But I've learned there is tremendous amount of herd sharing going on in this state. And so,
if we could, let's hold our applause, or we'll have to, I mean, I don't.
So maybe the halls will be cleared so we can get out. But we wanted to listen, but we are going to study this. And I think we need to learn more about this as legislators. So I think this is a good opportunity to continue this feedback that we've had as we move forward into the interim. When we get out of this session, we'll start trying to have some of these committee meetings and give us a chance maybe to travel across the state and see some of these things. So I think I think this is a positive outcome for everybody at this time on this section. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the members for support of this amendment.
All right, any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is amended. All right. Senator Sanderson, do you have another amendment you'd like?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. This is ATQ 26 version 2. Should be on your desk.
Right. Senator Jackson to explain the amendment.
Yes.
Amendment number 2, as I call it, this repeals the statute that allow for the sale of raw milk for non-human consumption. This would require any individual to be a part of a herd share to obtain raw milk. I want to repeat that. This amendment would require any individual to be a part of a herd share to obtain raw milk. Removing the sale of raw milk from non-human consumption closes a loophole in the process and ensures that only those that have researched and acknowledged the risk can obtain raw milk. And that's what it does.
Any questions on the amendment? Was that a moo or a? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed no. The ayes have it. The bill is amended. And I think Senator Sanderson, do you have another amendment?
I have one more, Mr. Chairman. ATQ 28 version 2.
Senator Jackson to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amendment number 3 does 2 things. One, it removes section 3 as stakeholders have discussed and determined there were unintended consequences of this section and further details need to be discussed. Secondly, this amendment makes a technical change to section 9 to clarify that this section does not repeal the other criteria currently used in the statute. I would ask for your support.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. And I think we have one last amendment, this one from Senator Sari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to amend the bill. This is ATQ-32. I'm glad to explain it.
You're going to explain it? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this deals with the present use value entity test with respect to ownership of farmland. 100 counties, 100 different tax offices. They each evaluate how they determine somebody is principally engaged in the business of farming differently, which creates some confusion or regulatory challenges. This simplifies it to a look-through test to see if the members of the company that are claiming the PUV exemption are in fact actively engaged in the business of farming rather than some other arbitrary test from county to county. I'm glad to answer any questions, but would appreciate your consideration.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Grafstein.
Thank you, and thanks for the amendment, Senator Sari. Present use value, critically important to a lot of farmers in Southern Wake County. I'm sure it's true in Johnston County as well. They could not farm if they didn't have present use value. The one change I noticed that I wanted to ask you about was, if I could find the piece of paper, but it was changing the ability of the assessor to, essentially, there was a rebuttable presumption, but the assessor could make a different determination regarding the use of the land, and I wondered if there was a specific, I did find it. It's, it takes out section 1 about meeting the conditions and the principal business to be farming agricultural land, et cetera, but then it says the presumption afforded the applicant may be rebutted by the assessor, and I wondered if the intent there was to change the standard essentially for who can claim present use value, and kind of the corollary question is whether there's impact on county level tax collection that's been explored with regard to that.
Response.
Yes. It will not have so the underlying property itself does not change. What it does is it looks at the entity as to who can own it. So right now, you and I are great examples, Senator Grafstein, you and I can own property in the present use program provided that it meets certain criteria. However, if I have Benton Sorry LLC, which may or may not be determined to be principally engaged in farming by the tax assessor, then it may not qualify as an entity that can hold it. What this does is looks through to see what the member is doing with the property and if the member is actively engaged. So the underlying property itself doesn't change, it's just the qualification of who can own it and provides consistency across the board with a very specific test rather than some arbitrary, subjective, principally engaged argument.
Follow up briefly.
Follow up.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Sorry. And I just got this, and so I'm trying to digest it myself, so to speak. It's not raw milk, so if we could talk about it some more, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you have another question? Or is that, okay. All right. All right. So we haven't voted the amendment. All in favor of ATQ 32 version 2, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right. So a number of people have signed. Any other questions from the committee about the bill? Senator Chitlick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have, very brief remarks on this. Thank you. First, I just want to thank Senator Jackson for his really deep engagement with me on this bill and for his willingness to find a solution on Section 20. I would have preferred full repeal, but I appreciate all the work that you're doing, and I agree that I'd love to learn from our small farmers about what they're doing right. However, I'm disappointed, as you know, that Section 19 remains in what would otherwise be a very bipartisan bill that is a result of a lot of your hard work. And, like the hundreds of constituents, maybe thousands at this point, that have flooded our inboxes, I really see the raw milk provision and the pesticide immunity provisions as related. In my mind, they both put big business over personal freedom, and I think that can be very dangerous. So, while we're no longer members, I myself joined a herd share when my son was a year old, and I'm a big believer in data and science and evidence, so I did a lot of research about his diet and the benefits of raw milk, and I learned that very scary diseases like tuberculosis, bacteria, E. coli could indeed be passed through raw milk if safety standards weren't followed or testing wasn't done. So, I mitigated that risk by finding an amazing farmer in my district in Rougemont who tested their cows regularly and abided by very strong self-imposed standards, like most, I would say, of our small herd farmers do. I exercise my freedom, which put no one at my family at risk, unlike other public health choices that are understandably more regulated. So, I'm all for risk mitigation and public safety, but my fear is that Section 20 did not arise from a deep desire to mitigate that risk or to keep consumers safe, because we regulate and sell things like raw oysters, tobacco, alcohol, which are far more dangerous, right, than raw milk. My fear is, again, just like Section 19, that the pesticide provision, that it comes from a desire to protect and privilege corporations at the expense of our health and our freedom. I would very much love to be wrong about this, and we can talk about that. I just have a very hard time believing that raw milk is a bigger threat to North Carolinians than harmful forever chemicals that have been proven to cause cancer and are banned in 30 countries. They're banned for a reason. So I think our constituents have a really hard time believing that too, constituents way all over the political spectrum, which is why they've been passionately reaching out to us en masse, and I think we should listen to them. So again, I want to applaud the compromise on Section 20. I know that comes with a lot of work that was done very quickly, and I want to encourage you to reconsider the decision to keep Section 19 into this bill, and I would love to support the bill once that is amended. So thank you.
Thank you. And I guess if the public, I know, some of you are passionate about this bill, but if you could just hold the applause and maintain the decorum. Your voices on the bill are sitting here in front of you, your elected officials, so let them do the talking, please. We are going to turn to
Mr. Chair, speaking of which, thank you.
Senator Grafstein.
Thank you. just to echo what Senator Chitlick was alluding to, and I'm sure a lot of the emails you got were like a lot of the ones I got, maybe the same ones, that absolutely tied the raw milk issue and the pesticide issue as consumer protection issues. I just want to mention, I walked in past a long line of folks who were not able to get in. One of my former constituents, Karen, who used to live down the street from me, who's come to see me about a lot of things that we have not agreed on over the years. She was like, you know, we have to do something about this raw milk and pesticide provisions, and she read me her comments, and I just want to echo, this really is kind of a concern that's as you can see, activating people kind of across the political spectrum. So I hope that we can do something about the pesticide provision, because otherwise I would be happy to support a lot of the other provisions of the bill.
All right, so for the committee's benefit, we have the room until 12:15. We're going to finish this bill by 12, which means we have about 11 minutes left. So we have a number of speakers who have signed up to speak. If because of the amendment you could defer your comments to someone else who still has concerns about the bill, please do that, because we probably only have about enough time for maybe 9 or 10 speakers. So first is Hubert Karaman, and you'll have 1 minute each. So if you'll tell us who you are, who you're with, and you're welcome to speak to the committee.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Hubert Karaman, dairy veterinarian for 30 years and owner of Reverend's Farms in Alamance County. We milk 60 cows. I just want to let people know about the bird flu is transmitted by respiratory transmission, not by ingestion. There's been no milk illness or bird flu illness from raw milk ingested across the U.S. If anything, is pink eye is what people have gotten. I've heard that this is the amendment that is of minor economic importance. If you look at the law that was passed in 2018, it affects all the people with herd shares that have started that since then, and you'd be pulling the rug out from underneath them if you were to not allow herd shares. And it's also a lot of small business locally that helps. It helps the refrigeration, the vacuum, the feed salespeople, and everything. And it's a lot of economic vitality when you have a lot of small farms. I'm not sure if the pet milk issue is what's that. I'd like to know how that is after the amendment, if I'm allowed to ask that. It sounded like that was being nixed for herd shares, or?
Sir, I think we're not on the amendment anymore. We need to just move to the next speaker, please. Next is Dr. Alexandra Munoz.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Alexandra Munoz, and I'm a molecular toxicologist. I'm opposed to Section 19 of SB 639 and advocating for its complete removal. I do not represent any corporations or lobbying organizations. I'm speaking on behalf of the future generations of North Carolina with my grave concern. First, I would like to make clear that the EPA-approved labels do not reflect the peer-reviewed scientific literature because companies submit their own data to the EPA under FIFRA. In addition, the weight of the scientific evidence rebuttal to the liability shield is scientifically unfounded, as there is no standardized review process for this type of criterion, and it is designed to favor corporations who are willing to act without scientific integrity and put products on the market that are harmful to humans with their knowledge of that harm. This amendment is going to harm the health of the future generations because it exposes them to a class of chemicals that is known to have endocrine disruptors, known to cause cancer, and known to damage fertility. I strongly recommend that you remove this amendment in order to protect the health of the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Behrens.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Behrens. I'm here today on behalf of the United States Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to speak in favor of the pesticide liability provision, Section 19. Today, manufacturers and sellers of pesticides face a catch-22. The federal and state regulations governing pesticides are very robust and extensive. Pesticides are among the most heavily regulated products sold in the marketplace. Before a product can be registered for sale by the US EPA and the North Carolina Pesticide Board, extensive testing must be done, and the agency must review that and approve it, in particular approve all of the label language. Today, manufacturers face this catch-22 because they put a product out with a label that is approved by the EPA, and they can only use the label approved by the EPA, and yet they still face tort lawsuits, personal injury cases in the state tort lawsuits, saying you should have used a different label than the one EPA requires you to use. The manufacturers cannot, on their own, decide to change the labeling. So because of this extensive regulation we have today, the manufacturers are in a catch-22. This bill strikes a fair balance. What it says is it creates a presumption that the label is adequate to satisfy state tort law duties. It is not a complete defense. It only governs the duty to warn. So you may hear a lot of untruths about what this bill does, but be very clear and look at the language. It is only dealing with the duty to warn, and it is only a presumption that the federally mandated warning is adequate. There is no protection in the bill for design defect claims. So if somebody says, well, you should have used a different form.
Sir, your time has expired. I'm sorry. I tried to let you.
That's okay.
There, but, Kelsey Barefoot? Still. Okay. Sarah Johnson. Michelle Morrow.
Thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak. And I too was a representative of the 4,500 people that within 48 hours said that they wanted to protect herd shares. But I want to speak to the milk, the pet milk. I think we know that the number one job of anybody that is elected official is to protect the God-given inalienable rights of every citizen here in this state and in this country. And I think one of the most basic rights is the determination of what we're going to put into our body and what we're going to offer our children to eat. And so I think it would behoove us as an entity to recognize that in a day when so many farms are actually being now owned by China and other foreign entities, that we should be supporting the farmers that have independent family-based farms. And that is only going to be strengthening our health when you have nutritious food that's right from the source. It's also going to be strengthening our communities because the relationships that you have, we just heard it talked about, that it passes over political lines, as well as it's going to be bolstering the local economies. And we all know that North Carolina and our small rural areas that have so much agriculture are really struggling with that. So I would appreciate you repealing the entire section of that bill and giving back the pet milk so that we can consume what we want to consume as North Carolina citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Holland.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Doug Holland. I'm president of the North Carolina Dairy Producers Association. There are a number of organizations across our state, North Carolina Farm Bureau, all the major cooperatives who purchase milk here in the state, the North Carolina Dairy Producers. We have taken a long stand and have policies in place that are against the sale of raw milk in North Carolina. Why? It has been proven, science has proven, folks, that raw milk can contain many pathogens, E. coli, salmonella, listeria, and now we have the H1N1. All of these things are detrimental to humans, folks. What we are saying, folks, is that we need to look at this bill. We are against the sale of raw milk. All milk under the Grade A program in North Carolina has been tested. Milk that leaves my farm is tested, every load of it, before it goes to consumer. It's tested for antibiotics, it's tested for bacteria counts, and then it goes to pasteurization, which takes care of any pathogens that might be in that milk. It makes it safe for consumers. And folks, I know there's a lot of emotions on this bill. I urge you to look at the science.
Thank you, sir. I think it's Robert, is it Boehner or Biner?
I want to start by thanking you for having all of us. It means a lot. I didn't know anything about our state legislator before Friday afternoon when all of a sudden my business was going to get shut down. So I'd like to start by apologizing We don't have great cell service on our farm, so I must have missed your call when you called to ask about our standards and practices, our hygiene, our sanitation, our members, our community. I feel bad about that because I think that I could have helped you a lot with this. And I hope that going forward, as we continue to study this issue, you work with small farmers. I understand there's a lot of emotion. I understand there's science on both sides. But I think if you show up to our farms, you see the care we put towards our animals, our land, our community, and the milk itself, all of your fears will be assuaged. So, thank you very much.
Catherine White.
Good morning. My name is Catherine White. I'm speaking on behalf of Penny Lewis, who's the owner of Empty Silo Farm near Yanceyville, North Carolina, who's unable to be here because she's working. We provide over 50 families with our raw milk products through our herd share in our community, as well as the Raleigh area. This is raw milk that my dad works hard to provide every day. Little did I know I would find myself using raw milk as part of a healing journey for my son. Being able to choose raw milk for our own family is our right. We don't push it on anyone. We simply make it available as an option outside the grocery store. The farmer's market allows us to choose which farmer we want to support for our produce, eggs, honey, jams, and a raw dairy farmer should not be treated any differently. We have the right to choose what foods we want to put inside of our bodies. It's up to us to ask the questions and find a farmer who we can trust and whose practices align with our beliefs. I'm asking you today to continue to allow us to be that bridge that connects people to raw milk if they need it or want it. Food is medicine, and raw milk is that part of so many families, including my own. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody that wants to speak on a portion of the bill that does not involve dairy? All right, so we have time for one more speaker. So, ma'am, we'll let you be our last speaker.
Hello, thank you. My name is Bernadette Pager, State Policy Advisor for the nonprofit Stand for Health Freedom. For the past 2 years, Bayer has spent millions pushing similar legislation as Section 19. Bills have passed in Georgia and North Dakota, but Missouri, Iowa, Montana, Mississippi, Idaho, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and Tennessee have either killed or stalled the bills because the citizens do not want them. EPA-approved labels should never be presumed to satisfy a manufacturer's duty to warn because the EPA does not require pesticide manufacturers to perform chronic toxicity studies with full product formulations. There is no catch-22. Pesticide manufacturers perform their own safety studies and they draft their own product labels, which the EPA only checks to see if it matches FIFRA law. If Bayer wanted cancer warning on Roundup, it would be on Roundup. There's ample evidence. Stand for Health Freedom and our 21,000 North Carolina members respectfully ask that Section 19 be pulled from the Farm Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we have a motion from All right, one last speaker. Is there a Stacy in the audience? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I'm Stacy Serrano, State Legislative Director and Legislative Counsel for North Carolina Farm Bureau. I'm here to speak on behalf of Farm Bureau, but also as a mother who trusts in the safest, most affordable food supply that we have in the world. And that is the American food supply. It's grown and produced here in North Carolina by American farmers, and those farmers rely on crop protection tools to produce their crops each year. Pesticides already undergo a rigorous review by EPA, and we have the safest, most reliable regulatory system in the world. I urge you to support the bill and support the provisions that are in the bill as they protect the tools that are necessary for farmers to continue to do their important work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, Senator Norm Sanderson moves for a favorable report to Senate Bill 639 as amended, rolled into a new PCS, unfavorable to the original with a referral to Senate rules. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed no. Ayes have it, and the bill passes. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members, and thank you,
All right,
audience.
Has a referral to finance, sorry. All right, Senate Bill 442, Parents Protection Act. Senator Amy Gailey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving along. So this bill is actually very simple. It does two things, and I'm happy to outline them briefly and then dive into the details as much as the committee and the chairs want me to. First, it would protect the biological, adoptive, and foster parents to care for their children without the threat of losing supervision over that child because those parents refuse to affirm the gender identity of a child who is experiencing gender dysphoria. The second thing the bill would do is shield parents who refuse to affirm gender transitioning, shield them from prosecution. For that fact alone, only the fact of refusing to affirm gender transitioning. The bill doesn't change anything else about the law as far as parents are abusive, neglectful, create a situation of dependency, then the Department of Social Services is still able to step into those situations, or the district attorney could still bring a criminal prosecution related to that.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing Senator Gusting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may ask if we have people signed up, I don't want to step on any public comment time.
There's a few. I think it's around 4 or 5.
Okay. Well, I'll be brief then, and we can talk further. Senator Gailey was kind enough to talk to me yesterday, as was Senator Bergen. I did not call Senator Sorry, so my apologies for that. So I did have a couple of follow-up questions. One of the things I was, as I expressed in my conversations with you yesterday, one of my concerns is that this bill does not, I guess, go in both directions. It doesn't protect parents who do affirm their child's gender identity. It doesn't protect parents who support the kinds of counseling and other supportive measures that may be available. It doesn't protect them against claims that there's abuse and neglect. And I sent you a few articles about some claims that have been made about parents who are in support of their child's gender identity being accused of being abusive toward their children. And so that's one of my concerns about this bill. My question goes to kind of one of your comments just a minute ago, which I appreciate you opening this on that issue, which is DSS has to place children, and they have to assess a lot of factors in making those determinations. I think I understood you correctly that this bill would not limit DSS's discretion. In other words, DSS could still assess the suitability of different homes for a child before placing that child, and would not be required to place that child in a home that did not profess an intent to provide supportive environment for gender identity. Did I get that right?
Senator Gailey, do you have a response?
Well, first, so you've brought up two different things. First, I'd like to address the question about parents who affirm the child's gender identity. To my knowledge, nowhere in the United States is that really being seriously impacted, where you have a state agency like the Department of Social Services coming in to remove a child from a loving home for no other reason than the parents support the gender transition of the child. That's not happening, and so there's no reason to address that with this bill. However, it is the case that there are reports around the country, not only of children being removed from families, from otherwise loving homes where the parents, for religious or other reasons, disagree with gender theory and disagree with the idea that their child should be transitioned to another gender. So that is happening for number one. Number two, there have been legislative proposals in states like Colorado and California that would require a child to be taken from a home if the parents do not agree with transitioning the child to a different gender. That fact alone, those legislative proposals would require it. I understand that after a huge public outcry only 5 days ago, that provision was changed in Colorado. However, the legislative process there is not finished, and I believe that that is one of the few things that California Governor Gavin Newsom actually vetoed. And so it did pass the California General Assembly, or whatever they call their legislative body there. So the reason for this bill being drafted the way it is that there is an actual issue in the country with how conservative or religious parents who disagree with gender ideology pertaining to minors, and particularly their own minor children, how they have been treated by the state and being removed, having their children removed from loving homes by the state. So that's the reason that it doesn't, the kind of sentiment that it should go both ways, that it doesn't play out here because there's not a basis in fact for that assertion. And then the second question you raised, something the DSS has to assess a lot of factors. I was a little confused by your question, honestly. And if you could restate it, I would appreciate it.
It was after a lot of words, so I'm happy to, if that's okay with you. Thank you. So the local DSS, the courts who are involved when there's a child welfare proceeding, they have to take a lot of factors into consideration. My concern is that this is hindering or limiting their ability to do that. And what I'm asking is that you address that as to whether this would require DSS to consider the supportiveness of the home, or require them not to consider the supportiveness of the home for a child that comes into foster care who has gender identity concerns.
So thank you for that question. So those who practice in the area of law with family matters, and especially in abuse, neglect, dependency court, know that it's the best interest of the child is the North Star of how it's looked at by the courts. So what this bill would do is say that in consideration of the best interests of the child, a district court judge could not remove the child or could not consider the foster family's willingness to go along with a gender transition of a minor. That alone could not be the determining factor in whether or not to place a child with a particular foster family.
Just a couple of follow-up comments, if you don't mind. So, and this is why I think it should go both ways, because if you don't want that to be a factor, then it should not be a factor that the family will provide gender affirming care. And one of the things that came up, really going back several years now, was the governor of Texas saying that he wanted DSS to investigate families who were providing supportive care for the children who were going through gender identity issues. So it's a very real issue. You know, and I'm happy to continue my Google research. As you know, yesterday I was trying to get you information between meetings, but I did find several references. But regardless, these are not issues that have happened in North Carolina before in terms of what's going on with parental rights. So if we're trying to address the concern that gender identity issues will come into play in DSS proceedings, then I think there's a way for us to address that in a way that's neutral as to how the courts should view the family involved. So a couple other things I just want to reference. You know, there was a reference to, you know, religious reasons why people might not want to support gender transition. Again, I go back to H808 last year passed. It's in the courts now. We've addressed the question. It's going to be decided by the courts as to what's legal, what's not legal, etc. And so I think that's sort of an issue that needs to play itself out that way. But we don't let in history, in the early days of child welfare, there were families who said, you know, corporal punishment is my religious right, and what the state has said is there's a line that you can't pass, right? And so suggesting that religion is a reason that people should not be required to behave in certain ways toward their children, I don't think DSS should be involved in every situation where there's conflict in the home. We've seen a lot of that in the disability rights sphere, where people with disabilities are deemed unfit to raise their children. So I'm not a fan of getting DSS involved in every dispute in the home or every issue in the home. But I do think we have to be careful not to favor one view over the other in deciding how child welfare conducts its work. With that, Mr. Chair, I apologize for taking more time than I meant to, and hope we can still hear public comment.
So I think we're going to need to, members need to get to other places in the room.
I make a motion.
Buck Newton moves to amend the bill. Was there any other committee member wishing to speak? I mean, moves for a favorable as to the bill. No, it's not a PC. All right, so seeing no other members seeking the floor, Senator Buck Newton moves for a favorable to Senate Bill 442 with a referral to Senate rules. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, and the bill passes. Thank you for your work today, committee.